Howdy folks. Today we're going to be looking at slightly more advanced features of Sequelize, that being how Sequelize handles foreign keys and table joins. So, we started off with our user model, and this is just a very simple user with a name. Let's go ahead and remove all this code here. Okay, so let's make then a second model, the address model, because users have addresses. So this is a one-to-many relationship, or yeah, because one user can have many addresses, but an address will only belong to one user. So address.js, we're going to import model and data types from, Sequelize, and then we're going to declare class address extends model. Now, let's init and call the init method. Remember, it takes two objects. The first one is the fields. So what do we want in an address? We probably want the street, just like we had in our SQL model. This is going to be a data type string and allow null false. And then I'm just going to copy this for the others. We have city, state, zip. And zip is actually going to be an integer. I think I can do integer. Let's actually find out. Let's take a look at the Sequelize documentation. Sequelize documentation, getting started. Model basics. And let's look over here, data types. We have integer. Integer is 1. Okay, so we have integer. That's fine. Oh, you know what? Oh, so we can actually put the size of our varchar. That's kind of useful because I actually want maybe our state to only be like 5, and our city to be 30. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. Okay, the other thing that we're going to need then is we're going to need to have a user ID. Now, Sequelize can actually create this for us once we set up the foreign key. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that alone for now. The next thing we want is our metadata. So let's require our config, our Sequelize configuration, and let's put that in there. So in the previous video, we created our index in models here, and it wasn't too clear why we had that because we were just exporting the user from it. So we're going to add the address in here. We're going to export user and address. But now we get to add additional data to it. So we can actually say user.hasMany address. And then we can say address.belongs to user. Okay. So now if we start our server again, or we run our index, which just syncs the tables, let's see what that does. Okay, so we're going to run index. Oh, first it crashes. Can I read property string of undefined? Oh, it doesn't like data type. Data types, plural. This is why you should always read the documentation. All right, so we're going to pull in data types and change that here. That makes sense. Data types. All right. Access tenant. Oh. You know, it would help if I actually started my SQL server. Let's do that real quick. Because obviously if it's trying to connect to the MySQL server has to be running. So let's take a look here. So let's just make sure I did that right. All right, that looks good. Now my server started. Okay, I run this again. Cool. So now it's created, done the users in the index, and now it did a create table if not exists for addresses. It had an ID, which it adds automatically, street, city, and you can see because we put that parenthesis in there, it puts that in here, state, zip, created that, updated that, that's fine. Then it has the user ID, integer. It adds a primary key, and then it automatically adds foreign key user ID references user's ID. On delete, set null, on update, cascade. Not quite what I want. I want it to actually delete or cascade on delete. So let's see. How do we do that with Sequelize? Well, let's take a look at our documentation. Creating with associations. Belonging association with alias, hasMany. We're looking for it's belongs to. Belongs to. Belongs to. There's got to be a way to do this, right? Belongs to cascade delete. On delete, cascade is not deleting records. Stack Overflow to the rescue. Answer. Comments is an end constraint. Well, that's not helpful. You're supposed to put the on delete in the category model. Okay, so when it says hasMany, this person is suggesting that we delete cascade there. So let's try that. So we go to our index, not that index, this index here. When we have our hasMany, we're going to pass in this option for on delete cascade. It doesn't go on the address, it goes on the user, which is kind of interesting. So let's try that. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to reset the database. And I'm going to pop in my schema here and run this again, which should cause all the tables to be recreated. All right. There we go. Now the address, first it recreates the user table as well. But now we've got our create table non-exist addresses, all this stuff, and then it says on delete cascade. Perfect. That's what I want. Okay, so how do we make use of this? Well, let's take a look. First of all, let's insert some data into our users table, right? So let's pull and some data from our address table. And so let's see, okay. Await user dot create, and then we're gonna say name Bob, okay. Const, and actually there's a special thing we can put in sync here. Force. And if I say force true, that means it recreates the tables every single time, which can be nice because I'm just dealing with temp data here. You don't want to put this in your production environment, but in this case, it means I don't have to keep clearing them out. It's nice for testing. New user equals await. Okay. So then let's add a new address. Address equals await address.create street 123 street. And then city, my city, state, zip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then user ID, I think. Yeah, user ID, uppercase I, lowercase d, new user.id. And let's just see if that works. Okay, insert into users. And you can see, basically, I'm looking here. Insert into users ID, name created at, blah, blah, blah. And then insert into addresses. That looks good. So if I go into my SQL, oopsie, and use testdb addresses, I can see there's my user ID. Just like that. Beautiful. Nice foreign key. Okay. So then let's do this. Let's say that I want to fetch all the addresses from this user. Okay. Also, you notice it dropped all the tables because force true. That's something Sequelize just does. So how does this affect our select? If I want to get, for instance, all the addresses for a user, I can do that. So normally I would say my user equals await user dot fetch find by pk, and then I can say new user dot id. that wouldn't be super exciting because that would just get me my user, right? So let's console log that. Dot data. I'm just gonna say data values because I only want the simple data from it. Oh, it's undefined because it's plural. That's why. There we go. It's ID, Bob, etc., etc. So let's actually utilize this for something else. Okay. So if we want to add this or get this address data, we would pass in include, and this takes an array of objects. Each object has a model parameter and then the actual model we want to use. So now, that actually is in the wrong spot. That should go on the find. So we put that on the find, and we run this again. Now you can see we've got a new column in here, addresses, and it's got an address, which has its own data values. Why is this an array? Well, because in here we said hasMany. If I told it hasOne, then it would give me a single object. So if I change this to hasOne, which shouldn't affect the tables too much, you can see now address is singular, but it also points to a single object. But if I have hasMany, then it gives me an array. So Sequelize is helping us out there. It's saying, okay, we know that you have many addresses, or you might have, even if you only have one, you might be expecting more than one. So we're going to handle that here. Totally cool. All right, so now we have our addresses. So the next thing is how do we do a many-to-many? So let's add a new table in here, product, model, oops, not import, model types equals Sequelize, and let's just import Sequelize right now. Config Sequelize. Class product extends model. Product.init. And the fields of our product is going to be, let's say, name, data types, string, null, false, and let's do a price. And so then type, data types.integer, null, false. Okay, and then Sequelize in there and equals product. Okay, we're going to pull it in here. Acquire product, and then we'll export it. Oops. So now, if we want to do a, nope, not this. If we want to handle a many-to-many relationship, instead of hasMany, or belongs to, we would say, okay, user. So remember the last time we did this, we had it set up so that product can be owned by many users, and users can purchase many products. So we use a pivot table. And in SQL, we just define that pivot table as, I believe we called it purchases. And so we can do the same thing here. But in order to do that, we'd say user dot belongs to many, okay, product through, and we can give it an actual name of a table here. But that's if you wanted to add multiple fields to your pivot table, you would actually define a model, and then you'd say through, and then like purchases, and then Sequelize will use that table. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a string, and then it'll automatically create that table for me. I'm going to do the same thing. Product belongs to many user through purchases. This needs to be the same table. Okay, so now if I run this, you can see now it created the purchases table. Create table if not exists. It put a created at, it put an updated at, it put a user ID and a product ID. And then it set the primary key as both of those. You notice it does not have an ID on this table. It's not the most amazing thing. I would prefer there be an ID, but that's okay. If I want there to be an ID, I need to declare purchases as a model myself, and then it'll put the ID on there. It has a foreign key on delete cascade, on update cascade, and then a foreign key on product ID. Same thing. Notice this does automatically on delete cascade because it knows it's a pivot table, and so that's important. Okay, so now we have purchases, which is just kind of a table that we can access, though the issue is it's kind of hard to actually insert anything into this table, because how do we do that? This table isn't there. So we may actually want to make a model with this just so that we can insert into it. So let's do that. Purchases, JS. I'm actually just going to copy the product because this one is very simple. Purchase, and I'm actually just going to call it purchase because that's how we do that. Purchase, and in this case, I'm just going to give it empty fields. I'm not going to give it any fields at all. Purchase. We're going to import that in here. Acquire, purchase, and we'll. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to actually utilize this table and create stuff on it. So now instead of this string, we can just say through purchase. Like that. And if we run this again, you can see it's still, it creates this purchases table still, and that's totally fine. But now we have an entry that we can use to access it. So let's go in here and let's pull in purchase and product. Okay. All right. So get rid of this. Actually, let's keep that around. Let's add a product. Dot create. It has a name and a price. Yeah. So now we've got a product. So now let's do an insert into our purchase table. Purchase.create user ID, which is going to be new user.id, and product ID, which is going to be new product.id. Now, if we're getting our user, we could also add another include and say model purchase. Or actually, I think we might be able to say product. Let's try product. Let's see what that does. And then dot data values. All right. So we do have a product now. We have an address and we have product, which we got through that purchase table. So let's see if we create another purchase for the same product. How does that show up? That actually puts 2 rows in that purchases table. Oh, duplicate entry. Oh, I don't like that. I don't want there to be a duplicate entry. How do I tell it not to do a duplicate entry? Because I want the user to be able to purchase a product multiple times. So let's take a look. Say, okay, I need to belong pivot table, no primary key. Because the issue that we're running into here is that we have that primary key, which is on user ID and product ID, and I don't want that in this particular case. Okay, so this person's saying, how do I, well, it's putting the ID in there, that's fine. If you don't define the primary key, Sequelize uses IB by default. If you want to set your own, use primary true on your column. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're just going to go in here into purchase, and we're going to create an ID type, data types, integer, auto increment true, because that's how it is, primary key true, not null, allow null. This is basically what Sequelize does by default. For some reason, it's not putting this in this table. So now let's try that. All right. A duplicate entry, one more for purchase. Oh, let's see. It's still creating that code then. A lot of stuff. So when it's creating our purchases table, it's doing the primary key, but it's also doing the unique key. So we don't want that unique key. Okay. No unique key. Pivot table auto creates unique key. Good. Unique key for column. This person's actually made a bug report. You can omit referencing the foreign keys in belongs to many. Can the foreign key. I don't think that's what I want. See, this in index is unique, etc. I define unique to false each column. It keeps unique column. That's not what we want. Unique constraint of Sequelize. Okay. Unique true. Okay, so but how do I tell it not to do that? Because the problem I'm running into here is this. I don't want this key to be here. Well, let's look at the belongs to many. Right? I shouldn't have gotten rid of that browser. Belongs to many. Let's just look at this function. Okay, what do I get to pass in here? What are my parameters? Oh, see, model belongs to many. Okay. Okay, options. Okay, that might be what we want. Belongs to many association options. Define the through is required. Okay, model, scope, unique. Okay, unique defaults to true. So then through can be a model, a string, or an object. So what this tells me, because it's an object, I need to actually change this to be an object as well. And then tell this is to be a model, and then I can say unique, false. And I need to do the same thing here. It just goes a little deeper. Model, and then unique, false. What do you not like? Oh, I don't. Needs another close. Okay, so let's try that. Let's see what that does. Well, I didn't get the error, so that's good. Let's take a look at our creation. That's addresses, purchases. All right. Yeah, it doesn't look like it has that unique anymore. Okay, so that's how you do it. You just have to make this a little more complicated and tell it specifically not to use unique. Okay, so then what did we get? We got addresses and products. You notice we only got one product. Even though we entered it multiple times, we only got one. That's okay. There's some other stuff with that. And that's because now you can see this complicated left outer join here. Purchases as products purchase, inner join products as products on products, blah, 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 purchases on user. So this is a very complicated join that we wouldn't have been able to really do ourselves. But Sequelize is just doing that for us. Well, I mean, we would have been able to do it ourselves, but it's like, you don't want to have to think about it. So that's how that works. I wonder if I say purchase and I put purchase in here. What do I get? Purchase is not associated to a user. And that's fair, because as far as Sequelize is concerned, I'm not associated to a purchase. I'm associated to the product through the purchase. Likewise, if I wanted to get all the users that had purchased a product, I could say, if I say products, await product.find by pk product.id, and then I would do the same thing as the second parameter. I would include array object model user constant.log product.data values. And now you can see in my product, I have my name, I have the price, and then I have a list of users that purchased it. So there are probably more fancy ways that you can do stuff with Sequelize. And I would encourage you to look into those as well, but this is how you would handle that. So to go over that again, for a one-to-many, the user has many addresses, so I says has many. On delete cascades, specify I want that to happen. The options are quite extensive. You can definitely look them up in the API. And then I say address belongs to user. For a pivot table, for the many-to-many relationship, both tables need to belong to that table through another model. This doesn't have to be an object. You could just put the model in there, but if you want to put special options on it, then you want to put an object like this. Then when you're actually doing your searches and you want to do joins, you say include on the find, and this is find by PK. This should work also with find all and find one. So you notice if we're putting like, normally we put like a where clause in here. If we were doing find all or find by a one, you'd also just have your include at the same time, and then you just put an object. There's probably also settings you can do in here. I wouldn't be surprised. But then there's model and the model that you're looking for. And that's how you do foreign keys and joins in Sequelize. You can see it is a little bit harder sometimes to kind of tweak what you want it to do, but it's also very convenient because it's a little less work. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you all in class.